So thanks to all the speakers. We've already had a compliment on the clarity of your presentations on what is actually quite a complicated set of different research strands all coming together. We have a few questions already in the chat, and some of them have been answered, so feel free to browse through there if you haven't already kind of clicked away to try the prototype yourself and lost yourself in our collection search. In the interest of time, I'm just going to quickly summarize two questions that came up that I think are around whether it can be used on black and white images, which I think the answer is just yes. Yes, John's nodding. And one earlier on about whether it can be used over text. Maybe I can hand over to Deepa and John on that one.
Well, certainly, I mean, it can take in any kind of image, but it will match, as I said in the chat, actually, kind of based on cues like color and stylistic similarity and kinds of objects present. You know, if you were looking to, you know, mark up like passages of a piece of text and look to find, you know, more text containing that passage, then the technology as it stands wouldn't really do that. It would be better to actually leverage some, you know, existing OCR technologies and run those over the images, and probably do, like, you know, some more regular text-based search rather than the kind of visual search we've been proposing here. So I think that's a good example of where some sort of complementary search technology would probably work well. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, it's a slightly different vein, but we did actually find during our user testing that many users wanted to combine both text-based searching and visual searching. So of course, this isn't using visual search on text, but since we're on the topic of text, it's good to mention that people wanted to be able to use the visual similarity search function, but then to also be able to refine using semantic terminologies or like date ranges specifically, or media types or things like that. So that was an interesting thing that people would like to combine both of these things together. There was a question from Richard about what the prospects for standardizing the feature analysis data are so as to open up the possibility of distributed image search. I think that goes to Suri again.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, right now, you know, we were taking data from various partners who'd shared it with us, you know, under their various data agreements, and extracted, you know, the features we needed to create a centralized search index across collections. So, you know, looking at how we might, you know, take those extracted features and share them externally was not really something that was within scope of the solution we developed. I'm not aware of any, because it's kind of emerging technology, you know, any kind of standardization that currently exists around sharing extracted visual features from a deep network. I mean, indeed, you know, even how you would share, you know, a deep network model is not a standardized thing. It's just based on the de facto standards of whatever machine learning software libraries you're using at a time, and they evolve super quickly. Yeah, I mean, had some really great discussions actually elsewhere within the National Archives on, you know, what it might take to archive a deep learning model, you know, that might have been used for government decision making, and, you know, how could that be part of an archive? I think this will be an important question actually that people need to address in the future outside of this project. So yeah, I think it's an important question how to standardize these kinds of AI-based features and share them around. It's not something we covered off on this project, but I think it's a great call out to an important stream of future work. Yeah.
Thanks, John. There's also a question from Anne on whether this technology can be used to check old photos and play around with them to get dating and clothing confirmed, and is there a copyright issue here? So yes, absolutely. The idea is to be able to play around with a photo you might have as a user. You can upload it, for example, into such a system. And presuming that there's a connected national collection, you could select the clothing in the photograph and see similar images, and learn more about, you know, maybe the provenance of that style of clothing and where there's other representations of it in different collections. If the metadata is also associated with all the images, you can learn more about the time period it came from. So as it all kind of comes together, this is the idea of the entire kind of visual search issue. Whether copyright is, of course, a question that will be getting addressed by the larger Towards National Collection Program. I believe we already had a webinar around some of these issues, and you can find that on the Towards the National Collection YouTube channel. So yeah, it is, if the collections are public and they are available online, then you can learn more about what their kind of reusability rights are there. But at the moment with our prototype, we're just kind of looking at images only, so not at the larger issues around this. I'm going to scroll down. I'm conscious that there's tons of questions accumulating now, so let me catch up. Let's see. Hopefully lots of things are getting answered already. Has Richard Palmer's question around scale been answered? I'm trying to catch up with all the all the answers here. Yes, it has been answered. Okay, could we have people raise their hands at this point, and that might make it easier if we have actual questions, because there's now a stream in the chat and I'm unable to catch up with it. So if somebody wants to raise a hand and ask a question live, please do so. Otherwise, I'll assume that everything is getting addressed in the chat, which is absolutely fantastic. Silence in the room.
Yeah, I think that question about, editing, if I understood that question about the clothing there, editing images to kind of explore data set, is a really interesting question, because I think it calls out, alternative use cases for visual search. Like we've been referring in this presentation quite a lot to the technology as visual search, but I think it's better to consider it a visual similarity technology where only one use case is targeted search. The other one being, as the project's called, like discovery, right? The sort of serendipity and discovery, the way to take a virtual walk through a collection without necessarily having a targeted destination, is something I think visual similarity technology is very useful for, right? And you can sort of see that a bit if you play around in the prototype. You've got some random images there at the start. You can drop one in, you can pick up other images and then make those your new query, or even make parts of those your new query. So that ability to kind of browse and discover using visual search, basically using the content that isn't necessarily there in the metadata itself, is, I think, a really valuable thing. So I think just calling that out, that it's more than just search, it's about discovery. Like, these are complementary tasks. I think that's something that's reflected in the user feedback, and something that I think we've been thinking about a lot on the project as well.
Yeah, I think that's something to think about with the survey results, where one of our questions was, explain a visual search to someone and saying, have you used it before? 50% of people said they had. But actually, I imagine the technology, the visual similarity technology behind it, probably everyone has experienced that on the web. They just might not know that. So, things like Pinterest or Google Images, when you go from one image to the next, and it's recommending you similar images, is using that kind of technology. And those systems are so intuitive. And actually, they are doing a lot of the tasks that we're talking about today, about being able to refine just by clicking from image to image to allow that refinement to happen. And I think that's really a really powerful part of this technology.
Alan, you've got your hand up. Please go ahead. Oh. Alan, did you want to ask a question?
I think Jack just answered it. I was thinking about technology to build learning libraries, use cases, and how you might start to enable users to think about how they could use the tool by sharing some of those image libraries and the thoughts behind them. It was just, so it's not a question, it's a very unformed thought, but I think Jack sort of answered it. But if any other thoughts on that, be really interested to hear.
Jack, did you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, you cut out a bit, so I didn't hear all the question.
It was very well formed, Jack. It was how users might how some super users in effect might really inform other users how to go about using this in a meaningful way and sharing their sort of strategies for use, whether that's something that came across in your survey.
I think it's really interesting to think about like the different tasks that people are using it for. And I think you could get tools which are very bespoke for certain tasks. And I think you can get kind of more general tools. So if I think about the V&A and how we might apply it to our collections, I could imagine it being used as a, you know, as an add-on to our search functionality on top of the website. And in some sense, that might be about for more advanced users, maybe for researchers or people who they have a particular image, they want to go from there. People who used to use that kind of more advanced search tools. I think it's still a bit of a leap for general users to start with an image that they're uploading. I think that I can see total use for those kind of users, but I think also equally the same technology, as we said before, could be used to create pathways for our collections where people don't even need to upload an image. They just click on something and then we show them a load of, you know, similar stuff, and they don't even know what's happening behind the scenes or that visual search is happening. So I think, and again, that speaks to looking for more targeted search, and then speaks to more kind of discovery and explorative search. And I think it's got scope for, for lots and lots of use cases in that way.
I think if I could just add, I think the whole explainable AI is kind of vital. So this makes it explicit, even though it's a little bit of an intrusion, it's there. And whereas the commercial sites are doing it as part of a seamless interaction, and you're not aware of that persuasion and coercion and personalized kind of user journey. So I like the fact that it's there, even if it's not yet understandable. We're being explicit about those, you know, opening up the black box, if you like. So that's a step in the right direction for me, even though it massively impacts on the processing, because you're having to, you know, but I just think it's nice as an intervention to make a little bit of a friction, I suppose, in these otherwise really automated processes.
We've got several questions from Joe Padfield. I think a few of them are already being answered in the chat, but maybe did you want to speak to directly editing in a bag of words rather than trying to achieve the same result by adding in additional images? This is from Suri, I think. This might be our last question for the session.
Yeah, try and understand what that idea is. So when people are scribbling on the image, they're identifying basically patches of the image they feel are important, and that is, you know, they're like the visual words, right? They're identifying are important, and then we're sort of feeding that back into the deep network to kind of upweight those features so that the results come back more relevant with respect to that scribble the next time. So, you know, when you say like directly editing the bag of words, I'm not sure. I mean, that's kind of like what the user is doing when they're scribbling on the image behind the. I guess that was the desired answer.
The general idea was someone presented a graph. And I was wondering, sorry about the small person in the background. I was wondering about the idea if someone could then see what terms had come out of the bag of words and what intensity of each one. So rather than trying to visually work out what you need to do to your image to enhance one bit rather than another, if you could just scale one graph down and the other one up and see the result, whether that might be quite an intuitive user interface.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that's certainly something that would be easily implementable to try out. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how users got on with that. I guess the thing is the visual words are they're not necessarily mapping intuitively to user kind of interpretable concepts. So I don't know, you know, a slider on a particular visual word. I'm not sure. In some cases, it probably would mean something to a user, and in some cases it wouldn't. So it would be interesting to see how users got on with that. But yeah, it's certainly something that could be done. It's a good idea to try. Yeah.
being able to engage with that might also help the notion of understanding what the AI is doing. Because if you could see that it's finding frogs, oh, frogs means this. If I scale frogs up, I get more of this type of thing. So that may help from an engagement point of view as well, even if they didn't end up using it normally.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Most of our research was focused on using these sort of GradCam-like techniques to try and explain the deep network, right? Because that, you know, there's quite a lot of open research questions around explaining, you know, deep networks. But yeah, I think combining the explainability of bag of words model with some of these deeper models that are harder to explain is definitely an interesting direction. I agree. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're at our time now. So I've seen an incredible amount of really good discussion going on in the chat and some great links also being posted around. So I hope everybody's had a chance to click through things. I'd like to thank the speakers once again and just thank them in general for the incredible research that they've done on the project, and thank the Towards the National Collection Program for supporting our work as well and for hosting us today. The webinar has been recorded, so it should be on the YouTube channel eventually. And if you do have more questions or further insight that you'd like to share with us, you could contact us at research@nationalarchives.gov or at my email address, and I'll redirect your questions where most appropriate to be answered. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and have a lovely afternoon.